Welcome to part 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new miniseries on Star Wars Disney Plus. And I've reviewed parts 1, 2, and 3. Feel free and check them out if you're interested. We'll start off real quick with non-spoilers, then move over to spoilers. Overall, this was a pretty substandard episode, but to be honest, the overall miniseries has been disappointing to say the least. The writing could have been way better. There's a lot of tropes, cliche, not very good character development, and this episode is no exception. It's the shortest episode so far, 36 minutes, and I can't really go any further without putting in spoilers. So if you're already watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously you've made it to part 1, 2, and 3. You're halfway through. You might as well stick it out till the end for better or worse. So I'm sure a lot of you are probably going to be watching part 4 anyways. But let me know below in the comment section your thoughts, your views, and opinions regarding part 4, as well as what you think is going on with Obi-Wan Kenobi, this miniseries. Do you like the direction? Do you think that it could be a lot better? Or do you wish that Disney Star Wars would have never did this miniseries at all? All that welcome below in the comment section as we move over to spoilers, which picks up shortly after part 3. Tala and the loader droid managed to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi. They got him aboard a ship off the mining planet. They took him to, I guess, another planet where the Path is, an organization that is working to try to rescue Jedi and Force sensitives from the Empire. And they dip him into a Bacta tank in order for his burn wounds to heal. But Obi-Wan starts having visions of Vader, who's also in a Bacta tank. I don't know if it's implied that they're envisioning each other through the Force, but that seems to be the case. And Obi-Wan gets out of the Bacta tank a little too soon, according to Tala. Meanwhile, Leia was, in fact, captured by Third Sister. They were taken to Noor, the water moon where the Inquisitors are based. And it's also in the Mustafar system, not too far from the planet Mustafar, which is, of course, where Darth Vader's castle happens to be. Meanwhile, Leia is interrogated, threatened, and nearly tortured by the Third Sister. Leia is, bear in mind, a 10-year-old girl, and Third Sister is the reason why Leia was kidnapped in the first place. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan, Tala, and other members of the Path launch a rescue attempt, borrowing from A New Hope as well as Jedi Fallen Order. The show seems to conveniently forget that Cal Kestis also infiltrated the Noor Fortress Inquisitorius, or whatever it's pronounced, 5 years prior in a similar manner via Under the Water. No further spoilers regarding Jedi Fallen Order because some of you may have not played Jedi Fallen Order. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you check out Jedi Fallen Order. It was an awesome game. And Jedi Survivor is coming sometime in 2023, which will be the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. And I believe it takes place around the same time period as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And last I heard, Disney Star Wars was supposed to link all this stuff together, and it's all part of the current Star Wars canon, which includes the movies, the TV shows, including, allegedly, Star Wars, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, Rebels, and the comics. That's supposed to also be part of Star Wars canon, including current video games, such as Jedi Fallen Order. So I do find it interesting that they talked about how they had no idea how to break into the Inquisitor's Fortress when somebody did it 5 years prior in Jedi Fallen Order. Once again, no further spoilers regarding Jedi Fallen Order. Meanwhile, Tala somehow gets aboard the base as Obi-Wan Kenobi's swimming underneath the water. And that's believable because they do have the technology. Him and Qui-Gon swam with Jar Jar into the Gungan City in Episode 1 of The Phantom Menace. So it's obviously believable that Obi-Wan could go underwater with the right technology. Tala uses her position within the Empire to BS her way through security and into a security control room where she's able to help Obi-Wan Kenobi sneak into the Inquisitor's base. Tala nearly gets found out by a supervisor who she takes behind the scenes into, I guess, a server room not too far from the control room, and basically either knocks him out or kills him and goes back to helping Obi-Wan create a distraction. Meanwhile, the third sister continues to try to interrogate and threaten and play good cop, bad cop with Leia. And then she decides, okay, that's it. I'm going to take you down to our torture chamber, our dungeon, and we're going to do something terrible to you. I don't know if they were going to torture her or they were going to do something far worse to poor Leia, but at the same time, we know that it'll be okay because Leia is in episode 4, 5, and 6, as well as the sequel trilogy. So any pressure, any suspense regarding the fate of Leia's character isn't really there. It's non-existent because we know that it'll turn out fine for young Princess Leia Organa, even though she's 10 years old at the time. So third sister's about to do something to young Leia in this torture chamber. I don't know if she's going to freeze her, similar to what's happened to some of the dead Jedi or Force sensitives that are on display in this tomb that Obi-Wan ends up discovering on his way to this torture chamber. I don't know if it's a stasis chamber that they're all in, similar to being frozen in carbonite, or something else entirely. But once again, we know that this is not a big deal. It's not really suspenseful because Leia will be okay. She's going to be fine. And yeah, she does confront third sister interrogation prior about her dad being an Imperial senator. And of course, that doesn't really sway third sister at all. If only she knew who her real father was, right? Anyways, Tala does create a distraction, getting third sister to come up to her in the Inquisitor's chamber and tell her that she has information about the path being on Florum, how she was a spy, and she had to go deep undercover, all sorts of BS happening. Of course, the third sister isn't really buying it, and that's around the time that the lights go out in the torture chamber, and 2 stormtroopers that were left guarding Leia get taken out conveniently by a lightsaber, which was actually kind of cool. They got whacked by Obi-Wan's lightsaber. He rescues Leia, and to the credit of this episode, Obi-Wan actually starts using his lightsaber as well as Force powers effectively. So the rust is starting to come off. But this whole fight scene and sneaking into the Inquisitor's fortress once again feels like infiltrating the Death Star in A New Hope, as well as Cal Kestis infiltrating the same fortress in Jedi Fallen Order 5 years prior. So Tala, Obi-Wan, Leia nearly sneak off the base, but third sister shows up with stormtroopers as well as a few purge troopers. But then Obi-Wan, Tala, Leia are conveniently saved by 2 snow speeders. I guess they were aboard the Path ship that they came on, and they start blasting the base, and they attack it, allowing Tala, Obi-Wan, and Leia to jump aboard one of these snow speeders and fly off. The other snowspeeder is basically shooting at the base, I guess allowing them time to escape. And then it tries to get away. Then the third sister uses the Force to throw something at the other snowspeeder, destroying it. But Tala, Obi-Wan, Leia manage to get off of Nur and onto the Path ship, and then they safely get away. Even though this is the Mustafar system, which is Vader's system, and you think that there'd be a fleet of Star Destroyers preventing them from escaping, because they didn't mention early in the episode about where Vader was at this time. He was aboard his ship, which implies a Star Destroyer. Even if there's just one Star Destroyer, there has to be squadrons of TIE fighters also on patrol around the planets of Nur and Mustafar. Vader finally shows up at the end with some stormtroopers. He's pretty pissed off at third sister, lifts her up into the air, but she manages to get her life spared by convincing Lord Vader that she allowed them to escape by putting a tracking beacon on Lola, which was Leia's droid. And I guess that explains why Lola wasn't confiscated from Leia while she was in interrogation, because I guess third sister was playing some 4D chess here. Maybe she never really intended on torturing Leia. She knew that Obi-Wan would show up to rescue her. But there's just a lot of things that don't really make sense. What if Obi-Wan wasn't able to show up? What if there was no infiltration of Fortress Inquisitorius? Would Leia have joined those other Force sensitives frozen in stasis or dead in the tomb? Obviously, that would be a major violation of canon, because we all know that Leia ends up in the original trilogy as well as the sequel trilogy. And I think she's also featured in Rebels in at least 1 or 2 episodes, which takes place after the events of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was kind of cool to see the Purge Troopers show up, but they didn't really do anything. The Stormtroopers proved to be a joke once again, just like they have been throughout the Disney Plus Star Wars shows like Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, no exception in Obi-Wan Kenobi. But at the very least, if I am to give this a positive, Obi-Wan is finally using his Jedi powers once again, slowly but surely getting better with the Force, and his lightsaber skills have vastly improved since his confrontation with Vader in Part 3. Why Vader allowed Obi-Wan to escape the way he did at the end of Part 3 is still a mystery. So not only is the infiltration of the Inquisitor base to rescue Leia, just like she was rescued from the Death Star in Episode 4, not only was that used, but also the tracking device in order to track them to the PAF's base, similar to A New Hope, once again, borrowing a lot of elements from not only A New Hope, but once again, Jedi Fallen Order. If they're ultimately trying to give Reva, third sister, some sort of redemption arc, they're failing miserably, because she talks about how Tala's a traitor to the Empire, and she tells Leia that you're either with the Empire or you're against the Empire, similar to Anakin or Darth Vader's attitude. You're either with the Empire or you're against it. And bear in mind, once again, third sister did capture, interrogate, threaten, and almost torture and perhaps even kill a 10-year-old girl, among all the other stuff she's done in parts 1, 2, and 3. There was something else interesting that just occurred. When Tala was BSing her way past security earlier in the episode, she mentioned how she had information for the Grand Inquisitor, but the Grand Inquisitor is quote-unquote dead at this point in Obi-Wan Kenobi, even though that's obviously canon breaking. And by the way, at this point, Darth Vader hasn't named anyone else Grand Inquisitor, not Fifth Brother and not Third Sister. So at the moment, the position for Grand Inquisitor is vacant. So you think the security officer at the Inquisitor base and fortress would know that something is amiss when it comes to the Grand Inquisitor. You think that information would be something circulating around the base, even if it wasn't officially announced by Fifth Brother or Third Sister or Darth Vader himself. You think that the rumor mill's about, hey, where's the Grand Inquisitor? Rumor mill has it he might have been killed on the Crime Planet a few parts ago, but I still press X to doubt, because if he is dead, that's another violation of canon, because he's introduced years later in Star Wars Rebels. 4 parts down, 2 parts to go. I hope that parts 5 and 6 turn out to be amazing and the best 2 parts in this miniseries, and that anything that is potentially canon breaking gets resolved, and that if there's any loose ends, they get tied up in a nice, big, beautiful bow, and Third Sister gets what's coming to her. And no, not a redemption arc. Just like I talked about early on, she should remain a villain from start to finish, especially after everything she's done. I'm sure they would attempt to do some sort of further backstory when she's a youngling, because one of the Force sensitives in the tomb was a youngling, and probably one of the younglings that she attempted to escape the Jedi Temple with when she herself was a youngling. Why she wasn't tortured and executed or put into stasis with the other younglings is another mystery. Perhaps she also does have the dark side in her, and maybe that's something that Darth Vader and the Emperor sensed, which is why she became an Inquisitor instead of another display in the tomb of the Inquisitors. And that's another question I have. Why do they have the Force sensitives and the Jedi on display down in the tomb? You think they would want to have them displayed like in Coruscant to remind people of what becomes of the Jedi, or anyone that allies with the Jedi, or anyone that's Force sensitive that goes against the Empire. Is it more than simply a tomb? Is it a place for the Empire to experiment on Force sensitives? Are they not actually dead like we were talking about a moment ago? Is it simply just like a form of carbonite freezing? That's another question that may or most likely may not be answered in parts 5, 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So predictions right now with episode 5. I think it'll go very similar to the last arc of The New Hope. The Empire finds this path location wherever they were at the beginning of part 4, where Tala took Obi-Wan to heal in a Bacta tank, and there's going to have to be some sort of emergency evacuation. There'll be some sort of cliffhanger at the end of part 5 that'll lead to the final act of part 6, and Obi-Wan, Leia will escape, and third sister will either be killed by Darth Vader, fifth brother, the Grand Inquisitor will most likely return. Leia's involvement with Ben Kenobi will be conveniently forgotten by the Empire. Perhaps it's because Senator Bail Organa still has some influence within the Imperial Senate and is able to, I guess, set things right with the Emperor himself. And perhaps Leia is just seen as nothing more than an unwilling pawn, a senator's daughter, a princess of Alderaan that was kidnapped by third sister in order to lure a Jedi Master out from hiding 10 years after the Jedi Purge. My guess is Obi-Wan will end up going back to Tatooine, obviously, and spend the next remaining 10 years once again watching over Luke Skywalker, and he's going to be in tune with the Force once again, and will probably end up communing with Yoda as well as Qui-Gon in order for Obi-Wan Kenobi to become more powerful than Vader could ever possibly imagine. Oh, and one final note before I wrap up. This is one thing I keep forgetting to mention. I do not like the soundtrack, the score of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I really wish that they would go with more of a John Williams sound to it. I realize John Williams is retiring. He's up there in the years. He's done some great scores, not just for Star Wars, but a lot of other movies as well, like Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, etc. But Disney does own the rights to the Star Wars music. Therefore, it would be nice to incorporate that music into this series, like Darth Vader's theme, the Imperial March, as well as other elements like Leia's theme. I don't really think that they've used Leia's theme unless it's like really, really subtly, and perhaps too subtly, to be honest. It would be nice if the music of Obi-Wan Kenobi felt more like the Star Wars movies. I'm just saying. Anyways, your thoughts, views, and opinions of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 4. If you want to give me your thoughts about it so far from parts 1 to 4 and how you think it's going to pan out in part 5 and 6, feel free and let me know below in the comments section.